There's not much peace walking along the turnpikes nowadays. This is the A74. Just a constant din of noise, and I've got to wear this thing in case I get run down. But I'm turning off here because down there there's something very special. What a fine feeling of peace the moment you get off that road. Suddenly you begin to see the countryside, because when you're walking along the road, or even worse, if you're driving along it, you're busy looking behind you, looking in front of you. You're always conscious of this movement. But when you step off and see these rounded hills of the Dodds and the Riggs and the Cairns, you get the feeling of coming in to the real Scotland, this rather remote corner of Lanarkshire. And it's from these Lanarkshire hills that Clyde begins its journey from the hills to the sea. There's a wee bit of a mystery here. I've got a book in my pack here by Neil Munro, great Scottish writer, wrote some marvellous books, and this book is called The Clyde, From the Source to Its Mouth. Illustrated in colour, a great book, and Neil went up these hills to find the source of the Clyde. This is the very first place on the map at Crawford where the Clyde is marked as the River Clyde, and Neil Munro went looking for its source, and he found it just above the summit of Beatock, a place called Elven Foot. Well, the strange thing is, when you come to look at this, you discover there's a wee bit of a mystery, and I think maybe Neil Munro was misled, and I'm going to investigate that today. Watling Street, a bit of the old Roman road that extended from Dover to York, with a branch running from Carlisle over Beatock Summit, quite near the source of the Clyde. Behind me is the A74 climbing to Beatock Summit, and the wee burn here is the little Clyde, which flows into the Clyde just down there. But the stream that Neil Munro went to is a mile that side, and unfortunately that stream flows the other side of Beatock Summit, which means it goes to the Solway, not into the Clyde at all. If you were lazy, you might regard this as the true source of the Clyde, the Dar, where it becomes a big reservoir collecting the water from the hills. But I'm going a bit further. I'm going to follow the stream that comes into the reservoir. I'm 1,500 feet up in the hills, 9 miles from the railway, and where this burn, the thick cleuch, meets that burn called the Dar, is the beginning of the Clyde. How do I know? Well, I'll tell you. I looked back some very old geographical books, way back last century, and it's given clearly beyond any doubt that the headwaters of the Clyde can be found in the Dar water, which is its greatest tributary, coming down from these hills. And there's an old rhyme which says, Annan, Tweed and Clyde rise all a hillside. And no doubt that's why the railway company decided to run their excursions. There was a railway station at Elven Foot, and it was easy to say, up there is where the 3 great rivers rise, including the Clyde. The Clyde comes from the Brythonic language, Welsh, it's akin to Welsh, and the Clyde means the strong river. And never was there a better description. It's longer than the Tay, it's longer than the Forth, and I'm going to take a loop over it where it begins its life. Well, it's great to see a film that you've made a long time ago and relive the experience. And that was a particularly fine winter day. No wind, pale blue sky. You would never have known that in a few days' time it would be snowing. And in the interval, it was raining for us. We were staying in Crawford, amongst these Lothian hills. The Clyde rises on the west side of the Beattock group. Now, these hills, although they're very rounded, and although they seem very tame, in fact, they still are some of the loneliest hills in Scotland. From Crawford, all sorts of openings lead off, because in the old days, before there was an A74, the passes from the Solway side came over the Lothian hills, past Warnock Head, the highest village in Scotland, higher than Tomintoul, although many people say it's the highest, but it's the highest in the Highlands. And right below Warnock Head, another village called Leadhills. So one day in the rain, I went up to Leadhills just to have a look around and found myself in a most extraordinary place, a wee library. What a place. I feel like the Beatles, except that this isn't the Bible. This is a book, a journal, going away back to 1842. And I got a shock when I opened it, because here's an entry referring to one Thomas Weir, myself. It says, Thomas Weir went underground at Susanna. That's the name of a vein, a lead vein, about 6 o'clock. Visited the workings in a part of that mine, visited the workers above ground, and let the following bargains. And there follows a list of names. The bargains were made with the men to pay them a rate for the job of taking out the ore from which the lead was extracted. Because this is the village of Leadhills, one of the 2 highest villages in Scotland. And this little pulpit that I'm in is in the miners' library, the oldest library of its kind in Britain. And right above me is the inscription, "Learning makes the genius bright." And the man who started this library was none other than the great poet Allan Ramsay, who was born here in Leadhills, went to live in Edinburgh, started the first circulating library in the world in Edinburgh, and no doubt, with the inspiration of that, brought some of its benefits to Leadhills. And the library is a great collection of things, not only a miner's library, a theological library, the records of, unique records of all the mining that's gone on here in the last 200 or 300 years. There's a fine collection of minerals, photographs, a history of a most remarkable village encapsulated here. And I'm going to have a word with the ladies who have made it possible for people like myself to come in and have a read here. Three of the ladies of the library committee who showed me my name in the book. Mrs. Cameron on the right, Miss Holly in the centre, and Mrs. Smith on the extreme left. You're the social secretary, Mrs.
Yes.
Well, what kind of things go on now?
Well, we have the first drives every week, and we have a sale of work once a year, and we'll run a big little raffle, you know, to bring in money.
I see. So the whole library is still doing its stuff?
Oh, yes, oh, yes.
And what about these books? But I know these are 2 particularly valuable books with a wee bit of a story attached to them.
Yes, the top one is the first edition of Gulliver's Travels. It was discovered during the summer. That was when we first knew that we had such a thing in the library.
Great, what a find.
It was.
And what about this one?
That, the Annals of the Old and New Testament, that was reputed to be found in the loft during the renovation of the place. And it's a very old, very valuable book.
How old is it?
1658.
So new discoveries are always being made?
Oh, yes.
But the library itself is not used so much by the villagers, I believe.
Not at all by the villagers.
Not at all?
Not really. It's mostly students.